Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Episode 11 of Rainmaker Runways is boarding, and we are en route to Liverpool in England for the 151st Open Championship, also known as the British Open on the SEO world and Google searches. My co-pilot right next to me is Joel, aka Draftmaster Flex, and he hasn't been in the cockpit for a hot minute. We've been busy. We've been doing some things, but maintenance on the airplane is done. We are ready for takeoff. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing well. The simplest way for me to put it is that I am ready for takeoff.
I love it. Listen, dude, you don't have to tell me anything more than that to get me hyped. I'm ready for takeoff. Let's go. It's the Open. It's a deluxe field. It's a deluxe event. All the money's up for grabs as much as you can wish for this week. We are going to dial you through every single person that we think is going to be valid for the player pool at Rainmaker levels, potentially a little bit of chit chat, and get you through the week very rich and famously. So, Joel, I know we were chatting in the studio just before we went live that we've kind of lost a little bit of enthusiasm, a bit of momentum, a little bit of love for the game, or whatever we're feeling, because prices of the cards have gone down. So if you're looking to kind of start pawning off cards, I'm now in the hole. You know, it's kind of just take your losses how you can. You're not really going to be selling guys for profit as much anymore. More so trying to just make money back in the contests. And franchise scores and things are all off the charts because people are just buying cards up now at a much cheaper price. So talk to me about your feelings. Let's get on the couch, a little bit of a therapy session before we really get into some airwaves and take off. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I think definitely the newness, the fun of the game. Not that it's weird. Like, I still enjoy it. I'm still going to keep playing, but the novelty of it in the beginning and learning it, I think, brought a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And now, like, I think part of the problem is nothing changes. It's the exact same tournaments you can enter. You have the same cards. I would like there to be a little bit more kind of change up throughout the season so that it kind of keeps you on your toes. I thought there would be more of that, and there just kind of wasn't. It's just the same tournament every week. So, listen, this is the last major of the year. There is a lot behind this. I'm super excited about this week. I learned a ton about Rainmakers this year, right? And the year's not over, but as we're heading into the last major, there's so many points that we've talked about before, even tonight, of let's save that for next year. Like, let's learn from this. And even where we saw salaries start to dive, and when you want to be strategic about selling, and when you want to be strategic about buying, and things like that. So I think it was a great first season. I think overall, I'm really stoked about Rainmakers coming back. But I do think there's improvements that DraftKings can make to make it an even better product over the next couple seasons, and hopefully they're able to take some advice or feedback from the players and build on those improvements.
And us content creators that are doing they're promoting for them, providing the people with information they need, what they want. And I was just thinking while you were saying that, I'm going to ask you shortly to give you 2 minutes to think about it, or 20 seconds. But what was your favorite or your biggest takeaway from this? But while you think about that, something that you were saying there is the prices of these cards have gone down. And I wonder if the Rainmaker contest went up in prize value, if that would help stabilize the decrease in the card values, right? Because people are just dumping these cards off because the amount of money left over after each tournament is less and less for those cards to generate for you. If, say, the Tour Championship was worth, like there's deluxe events, premier events, and then, the standard ones, as each major went by, maybe they would add a bit more to each major, kind of with the less events there are, the more prize pools still to generate that interest and investment that people have made in the game. So I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on that. Maybe that's a way to kind of help keep these card values from plummeting, as the events diminish.
I think it's a good point. I don't know how the mathematics or the economics fully work. I haven't done that formula, but it's clear there is some sort of formula that DraftKings has that shows that X amount of payout makes this value of the cards X amount. They have to have X amount of cards. Like, they've thought that through. I don't know how it all added up, but that's clearly what that came from, and that's why it feels so robotic that nothing changes week to week, because they very much have a formula that they wanted to keep. And I get that. And I'm not even saying that has to drastically change. I think they can bake in whatever it is. Maybe next year it's an additional, like you said, 500K in prizes that's already baked in that they use throughout the later part of the season to incentivize people to come back and do more, which right now it feels like there's no incentive. It's almost like you have this internal battle of, do I want to sell my cards and get something in return, or do I want to just keep playing?
Yeah. I feel like people that have come late to the party are benefiting because that initial investment, I've got $112 Sahith Theegala rare card out there that has lost $100 in value. You know, like I just don't feel like I've benefited from going hard at the paint early in the season.
But don't lose sight of you made a lot of money this season. And like you might not think about that, like you use that to hit the gala and maybe won $50 10 times, it's $500. So you it may have been profitable. So that person who can buy this and hit the gala now for way cheaper than you did isn't making anything. He has to go win this week. So it's a little different. There is value to buying early using the cards, but you have to be right? I think the other thing you learn is it's a bigger penalty than I originally realized missing early on a card, because you pay up for it, you pay a lot, and if it doesn't give you any return, you sell for less. You not only did you lose money on the card, you're also losing playing week to week and not getting any return on that card.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. And last week I had about 4 or 5 Seamus Power lineups that were just nuked by a WD on his behalf that put all those other 4 cards. Like one card can just completely sabotage all the other 16 cards of value, right? Like that Seamus Power card was just, I was powerless, you know, and that was a very disappointing time for me.
And I agree with that both in Rainmakers and in regular DFS. Going all in too much on one guy can ruin your week. And I mean, listen, there's also times where it can make your week. Seamus Power goes out and wins the tournament, all of a sudden you're golden. So I get it. I get both sides of the equation, but I try, like I said, a rule every week to not overexpose myself to anyone so that if I'm just wrong on one guy, the whole week is a ruin.
Exactly. And you know what? Depends on how you play. If you're aggressive, if you're passive, you know, like you kind of play field average or play 2x the field, that depends. You're going to have weeks where you're euphoric and you're going to have weeks where you're just depressed as heck, because that's just how it rolls, right? Like the more exposure you have on a player, the worse it can be. But also, like you said, it can pop. So we'll see what happens, but let's pull up the screen here and figure out. I've got something. Am I showing? Yep, I'm showing a time loop here. Give me 2 seconds while I get this figured out, because I don't want to dive into an Inception situation, and this is not the world we want to live in. But while I'm doing this real quick, tell me what you're kind of looking for from a player this week that you're looking to roster and figure things out from them.
Well, while you're pulling that, another thing I'll add is I think an interesting dynamic this week is how many non-PGA Tour players are in this field, how many European players, which I think is more interesting for Rainmakers because they don't have cards. And so there's a smaller percentage of golfers in the field that you can even roster, which has implications in terms of scoring. So mainly what it will probably mean, we'll see how it ends up, but what it will probably mean is leaderboard points will probably be less significant because it's not like every guy on the leaderboard will be in the tournament. Yeah. So if you take away like maybe third place goes to a European, then there are no third place points to go around. So something to factor in. I don't really know how to factor it in yet, but it's something that's just different than a normal week.
Yeah, it is really intriguing because what could happen is Scotty Scheffler could finish 4th, but Rory finishes 1st, for instance. And hopefully, you know, whatever, for my sake, that happens. But that may be, from a captain perspective, just having that captain with multiple spots of dead points, not unavailable to the other captains out there, can really help you like shoot you up the leaderboard if you nail the captain this week. So it happened with me at the Masters with John Rahm. He won it, and then we had Patrick Reed, Brooks Koepka, a few other guys that were right in there, and Phil Mickelson. The next guy, Russell Henley, I think was 4th or T4, you know. So it was a really interesting situation. But as we can see here, we've got Scotty Scheffler, whose card value has really not fallen as far as the others. You know, we've had John Rahm sitting around about $200 at some points in the year. We've had Scotty sitting there. Rory was roughly up at about 150, 175 at some points. They've all about halved at least. John Rahm's like thirded. He's gone down by like 200%, whereas Scotty's only gone down by, 60 or 80%. So talk me through your top three guys. Yeah, I think those are the three that we most likely going to have to decide on. Are you fading anyone? Are you rolling all three of them out there? How are we going this week? Yeah.
I think the most interesting one to think about for me this week is Scotty Scheffler. From a competitive standpoint, I mean, what's not to like? He's the best ball striker you're going to find. He plays well at any course. His worst finish in the last 5 outings is 4th. So, I mean,
Unreal.
for Rainmakers, it's like you don't have to worry about a balanced build because you can just play all the guys you want. So, for all those reasons, it's hard to imagine a scenario to get away from Scotty Scheffler. Even if your counter argument was trying to say like what people will do in DFS is trying to say chalk, there's only so many of them out there, and they're going to be played. So that doesn't make a difference in Rainmakers. I think his one flaw, which is putting, should actually be neutralized here because I think it's going to be tough putting for everybody. And I think, he actually is a decent lag putter. So that's, where he is. One thing he does well on the putting greens right now, that should translate well here. For all those reasons, even with the juiced up price tag, it's hard for me to imagine me putting out a lineup that I want to compete for first in without him in it.
Yeah, it is really tricky to think that. I had a Scotty outright last week, and I thought getting on these slower greens out in Europe might help him a bit. Still landed up losing 2 strokes for the week. It's just a staple now. I think we can keep hoping that we have a spike putting performance. It's almost as consistent as his ball striking right now. He's just as bad a putter as he is a good, exceptionally good from tee to green, actually. So not quite the comparison, but you know what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah.
Rory, Joel, personally, I haven't gone out and bought Rory rares at $83 a pop. I did go and buy myself 2 additional. I only have now 2 Rorys, and they are cores for $25 a piece. I might go grab another one and just buy myself 3 Rorys for the price of 1 instead of having him as my captain, just have him in 3 more additional lineups, which I think is the way I'm going to be rolling this week. Unfortunately, I don't quite have this late season budget without selling some cards to kind of go off the deep end with a Rory at $83 right now. So going to the cause for Rory, I've got obviously Scotties and Rams like we've been speaking of many, many episodes now. So that's how I'm going to be rolling. Ram might be a contrarian like captain if you really want to have one lineup that you don't necessarily think is going to be your absolute core. He could sneak in there as a guy that could do it, but I was looking at his form coming into the Masters, and it wasn't very good. And then he won the Masters. So he shows up, at these majors too. And I don't know if his driver is going to be there or not, but if you were to rank these 3 guys, how would you roll them out? I know Scotty's obviously number 1 for you.
Scotty's number 1. I think Rory's a close second, just because this also just feels like a setup that's course that suits Rory well. There's a lot to like about how Rory's playing and even the safety. But like you said, that is not an indictment on Rahm. I still like Rahm this week for a lot of reasons you mentioned. Now it feels like people are falling asleep on him. And that to even see Rahm at $72, like it wasn't that many weeks ago. It might have been the last time we even recorded a show. We were laughing about Rory, and Rahm was still in the lead tier. And look how quickly that has flipped. Rory's now more expensive than Rahm.
That is just this thing, dude, is how quickly how the turntables, the Michael Scott gif. It's just like so quickly, like Max Homer, Sahith Theegala, they were playing so well, and then just burp, and then their price plummets, and then you kind of stuck holding the bag.
Exactly. And like to the one of the things I was going to say also is if you have already a Jon Rahm, you're playing Jon Rahm. Like you're not like, oh, I don't think he's going to be in the winning round. Like if you have him already, he's in your lineup. The question you're asking here is who do you go out and buy in this circumstance? These 3, looking at these prices, I guess price per dollar, the buy is Rory because of how much cheaper. And I think Rory and Scotty are pretty close. I still prefer Scotty, but I guess if you're comparing per dollar, it's close enough where I would probably take Rory at the cheaper price tag. But
now looking at this column here, the FedEx Cup points, right? So the rankings are 1, 2, and 3, but John and Scotty are 1,000 odd points ahead of Rory. So thinking in light of the Tour Championship kind of thing like that, that's going to provide you with additional strokes, right? Those 2, Scotty most likely beats John Rahm this week, if things go the way they should and how they have been trending, and get into that first place in FedEx Cup points. How much are you weighing in FedEx Cup points into who you do have now? What going forward, is that going to play a part in your strategy of purchasing guys at all? Because we're probably 2 or 3 starts away from playoffs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about Rahm. Playing Rahm, I like Rahm. There's nothing wrong with Rahm this week, but it does almost feel like the bigger benefit of buying Rahm at 72 right now is having him for the FedEx tournament, where if he finishes first or even second in the FedEx tournament, which seems like in foregone conclusion he's going to finish first or second, he's going to get that point advantage. And I would have to think his price can't go down when that is right in front of your face, that he has that point advantage in that tournament. So at worst, he stays the same, likely goes up a little bit, being 1 or 2 with that point advantage. So you buy him now at this price, you can play him at the Open and then still have him going into the Tour Championship. But that strategy revolves around you making sure you are invested for the FedEx Cup and those last points.
And the points are doubled, I think, in those 2 first playoff events. So if someone gets hot, that lead could be gone. Like say, for instance, Rory wins one of those events, or potentially this week or whatever. You never quite know how it goes. But as it stands right now, they are looking like 2 guys that are going to have a significant edge on the field, depending on how it shakes out going into this final, East Lake 30, which I think is going to be a really important. That's going to be really fun, Joel. Speaking about that real quick, is gambling on a guy that potentially is sitting at 77th in the FedEx Cup points. Like, for instance, Shane Lowry. He's sitting 72nd right now. He's not in. This is a big week for him. If he doesn't play well this week, he might have to play at the Wyndham. He might have to play at the 3M because he's 72nd in FedEx. The top 70 only make it through.
So what I find really interesting about that, though, I never know what to do with that information, because there's some players that like that motivation, that play up to it. They motivate themselves. There's some players that kind of choke with the extra pressure and they don't play as well and it doesn't suit them. So I don't know Lowry well enough to know if this is something that will motivate him to have a good result, or if it's something that the added pressure will hinder him. So it's good information to have, but I don't want to overweight one way or the other. And I remember it was like 2 seasons ago. I was trying to prioritize in DFS guys that were needed FedEx points in the tournament, and it didn't work because they all kind of choked and it was too much pressure. So I'm not sure necessarily I have a lean one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Vincent Norman, who just won the Barracuda, the Barbasol, who's got more points than Shane Lowry. So this kind of range is going to be really interesting looking at it. There's potential for these guys' prices, like Sam Ryder at $299. If he somehow sneaks in, he's going to be one of the 70 players that plays, and not all of those 70 guys will have NFTs out there. So call it. I mean, what we got you a casual inside the top 70 right now, only 62 of them inside the top 70. So 8 guys are already missing. That's a tenth of the field, right? So just a really, really interesting situation going into that you have to monitor going forward. I think that definitely plays a bit of strategy involved.
And one thing I'll add is just a way to think about this for value purposes is to, like a spreadsheet you're sharing now, look up the guys with the most points and the lowest cost per card. Because those are the guys that will start with the biggest advantage in terms of points, or the cheapest level to buy an entry, which could just be if you're having trouble. Obviously, we're not doing that with Scheffler and Rory, but as you get down to the mid-tier, that could be a way to find value.
Keegan Bradley, prime example. Nick Taylor, prime example. These guys are sitting all the way up here inside the top 10 of the FedEx Cup. And we've got Ian Christensen in the mix here, one of our Rotoballer news desk guys, and he's asking us any players what's up, Joel and Byron? Obviously, hello, Ian. How are you, my friend? Thank you for tuning in. Any players you think are going to go overlooked this week and would be a cheap buy? Thinking of golf, so would be sub 10 to 15% in standard DFS contest. So the interesting thing about this and Rainmakers is the ownership thing doesn't necessarily matter that much, because a popular player in DFS is price dependent and also can be an exponentially owned individual. Whereas there's no one's going to be chalk in Rainmakers. If you have him, you have him. If you don't, you don't. They're not going to mitosis their way into having more cards or something like that. So it's an interesting situation, but we'll get to those guys here shortly once we can. Almost now, I guess, like Keegan Bradley and Nick Taylor aren't two bad examples. So thoughts on those two guys, Joel? While we're just jumping around, we're hitting a bit of turbulence here and the cockpit's shaking up a bit, but any thoughts on these two guys before we resort the price tags?
Yeah, Keegan has potential. I'm typically a guy that I don't love Keegan games. I typically don't roster him. So he's not someone I'm targeting. But I think Nick Taylor is really interesting. I think Nick Taylor's been playing really well. The ball striking has looked really good. For the price point he's at, I think there's a lot of upside. So Nick Taylor definitely is someone on my radar.
Yeah. And he's not like that bad on my total short-term ranking. He's 29th in my short-term ranking in strokes gained and trajectory and things like that. So he's not necessarily horrifically mispriced. So I do not mind him at all. And someone who's kind of been sneaking under the radar is Siwoo Kim too. I think he's really got a lot of upside that we haven't seen a lot of him lately. But he's sitting there in 13th in FedEx Cup points. These sneaky guys that won contests early in the year that kind of may not have that current form that a person like Tommy Fleetwood or Tyrrell Hatton has can definitely kind of be one of those sneaky guys. So we'll get into those guys here shortly. We can kind of keep an eye on the differences in points and ranking as we scoot down the price tags here from a bit of a long-term perspective. But let's deal with some more decisions that we have to make here for the Open. If you're looking just specifically for guys that you want to buy, if you're still getting into it right now or trying to get rid of cards or etc. So the next tier of guys is Xander Schauffele and Victor Hovland sitting at 55 and 52. Patrick Cantley, like a whole $16 cheaper than Xander. Remember how that used to be like pretty neck and neck? So let's actually just include these four guys in here. It makes the conversation a bit better. So we got Xander at 55, Victor at 52, Patrick at 39.99, and then Tommy Fleetwood at 39 flats. Two cheapers, two guys that are kind of a bit more expensive. How are we rolling in this range here, Joel? And feel free to throw some chicken or beef at me as hard as you want.
Yeah, what I find interesting in this range here, I think what I'm trying to wrap my head around more than anything is adjusting to the new price norms, right? With the price coming down, like my initial instinct was, wow, these guys are so cheap, but this is the norm at this point in the season. And so it makes you want to say, man, you got to buy Patrick Cantley for $40. But in reality, do you? I mean, is he giving you that many great results? It seems like a good value for Patrick Cantley for $40, but at this point in the season, I think I'd rather, especially in Rainmakers, I think I'd rather put my dollars toward like a Rory and Scheffler combo. And then of these four guys that we're looking at, my two preferences would be Hovland and Fleetwood, because we've seen Hovland spike in these major events this season. Mm-hmm. His ball striking is certainly there. And same with Fleetwood. Fleetwood's the type of guy that can make, he can gain 6-7 strokes putting, which, he's a good ball striker too. He has the complete game. At $40, I feel like his floor is very high. You're getting in a top 20 from Fleetwood regardless. So that's where I'll go back to you on the chicken or beef between Hovland and Fleetwood.
I think Hovland would be my guy I would go to. I think we've seen him now win on the PGA Tour. I think those floodgates are open. I would not be surprised if he was right in the mix for the majority of the week this week and at a major in Open Championship conditions. And I don't think he's inhibited by how low a tournament can go. Tommy, I think if this tournament, what are you expecting this tournament to get to? I'm hearing like -19s, -18s out there. So if that is the case, Tommy Fleetwood's off the radar for me in particular, because I don't think he can get low. He just struggles to go low enough consistently. Whereas I think Hovland can definitely do that. And I don't think he'll be scared to contend at the Tour Championships.
I think it's a good point. I just have I'm having a hard time settling on what I've been reading it could go really low, but then I'm like, well, what if the wind picks up and then, it can go the other way. So I feel like there's a wide range of outcomes for the final score here. If you remember at the US Open, day one played pretty easy, and then they got in a tizzy and they tried to make it more harder, and then the rest of the weekend was impossible. So I'm concerned they can do something like that and just kind of make it more challenging, just so that people, because no one likes to walk away from major with a -20 score. They want it to be challenging.
You know what I can see though happening, Joel, is it playing easy, but also guys shooting way the hell over the par because there's like 6 or 7 OBs just flirting down the sideline there, right? Just one bad drive can easily cost you 2 shots, So you're right off the bat, you're just hitting 3 on a 600-yard par 5 kind of thing, That
We've
can,
seen that this year in a few tournaments where like there'd be a few 8 to 12 guys that would go really low, and then a lot of guys is like 3-4 over. Like it's a tough day where there's a few guys who are dialed in that can go low. So it can be really a wide range, even on the same day.
Yeah, which I love that about any sort of golf course. I think that in particular was the LACC situation. Like there were guys shooting well over par, and then we had those guys well under par. The Rickies and Xanders. But after round 1, they only added Ricky, I think, lost strokes after the next 3 rounds, right? So it was quite impressive to see how that course kind of fought back a little bit. But I can see that happening this week, especially with all this OB and a lot of internal OB that isn't necessarily like you don't like an OB fence is intimidating to you, right? Like there's one of them that's got that 3-foot hedge that's OB, but on 18 there's just a little line of mowed grass. We saw that tweet today that the OB is just in this mowed grass that's in the middle of this fescue, like we'll see what happens. And if it's out of there and you don't realize it's really that close or whatever, you might find a lot more golf balls just flirting with that range. So some interesting situations going on here, and we'll see how guys take advantage or get boned by that. So next up, we've got some Tyrrell Hatton action. Max Homer, Wyndham Clark, Tony Finau sitting right here in this $32 to $29.99. And we'll throw in Shane Lowry for shits and giggles here. So Tyrrell, to me, seems like the obvious answer in this range. He's just trending so beautifully. The rest of the gang, a little concerning to me. Obviously a few of them, Wyndham and Max, with wonderful FedEx Cup points. So from a long-term perspective, definitely going to have that. Max has played better recently too. Not necessarily going into a major though. So we can discuss that. So thoughts?
I'm with you. In this range, it's Hatton by a lot, and then the rest of them. I guess my number 2 here that I still like a lot is Wyndham Clark. I mean, Wyndham Clark's been pretty consistent all season. The ball striking has been really good. He's shown already that he can play well in majors. So I would still prefer Hatton here, but I think Wyndham Clark's my number 2 in this range.
You want to hear a horror story, Joel? The tournament before the US Open, I won a Wyndham Clark Elite, and I never had enough other Elite cards to put in a lineup, and I landed up somehow not playing him that week.
Oh, man. Oh.
I know.
Well,
what a mess.
If it makes you feel any better, early in the year, I ended up buying a bunch of Wyndham Clark for a tournament that I just, it was a week tournament. He was a better player. I had a ton of Wyndham Clark. He had a really good result. I was like, feeling myself. And then the next week, he was selling for way more than I thought he should have been because I wasn't fully sold on him being this good permanently. I ended up selling all of it away, and then he ended up going on this run where he was great for like the rest of the season. So
it was Punta Cana, right? Because I think within the space of 8 weeks, he went from playing Punta Cana to winning the US Open or something crazy, or 11 weeks.
He didn't win Punta Cana, but he got like second. Like he did a really good result, right? Yeah,
he was right in the mix there and just couldn't quite get it done. And then when playing from alternate event tournament to just basically the US Open champ, so incredible stuff. We'll see what we can get up to with old Wyndham, but I do agree. I like Wyndham a lot. I think he's going to, especially the reason I like Rory the most this week is because I went and watched that Golf Digest flyover, because we pilots and stuff and we like that kind of thing. But the bunkers around this course, I think those pot bunkers this week are going to be dead. They're going to be coffins. Like if you in them, you toast, so you can be accurate as heck as you want, but balls on these links courses can bounce any which direction. A bad bounce can land up in there. If you're flying those bunkers, a bad bounce isn't going to get you in them, right? Unless you're bouncing backwards, which is not going to happen. Rory is going to be just taking pictures of these bunkers, I think. And to me, that's going to just give him a major edge over Scotty. Even though the ball striking's there, I just think that distance, just to make sure you can carry it no matter what, it widens the fairways for you.
I have to give you your flowers here because I think one of the biggest mistakes people make in DFS is that they go against someone, someone gets on their bad side, they disappoint them, and they just stop playing them. And it wasn't. I think the last time we did a show, you were like you were off Rory. He wasn't winning. He never closed the deal. And now, I mean, it's only been a couple weeks, and you're like, I'm playing Rory, and that is the side. Like that is how you should be. You should not let 1 week, even if someone burned you, let that burn you in the future, right? Because golf is a week-to-week game. Like me, it was a flaw of me. When I just said I don't like Keegan Bradley, that's a flaw of mine because those week Keegan Bradley wins, I never play him, and I always lose those weeks.
Yes, dude. That's it, man. It's an emotional thing. You get emotionally invested on these guys. They burn you, you know, like if you just didn't play a guy for a certain week and he had a bad week, that doesn't nearly impact your long-term decision-making about him nearly as much. But if you played someone and went balls deep on him and then all of a sudden he like lit up your lineups because he played badly, that impacts you going forward, you know? So you got to really almost treat these guys as data points, just reset every week. But I don't know. It's difficult, and I never played any Rory last week. I went all in on Scotty. I think I had like 55% in my DFS lineup. So, you know, I'm learning my lesson, Joel. Hopefully it's not too late, but I'm in on Rory this week, and Wyndham Clark suits that profile. The fact that he can carry those bunkers, I think is going to be very important. He's one of the longest hitters on tour, and he can just absolutely nuke them out there. So we'll see what he can get up to. But him and Rory both are very inaccurate. So there's that potential that they could land up re-teeing on a hole or two. And that's also scary. So, you know, shoot for the upside, hope for the best, and off we go. So we'll see how that goes. But neither of us really wanted to speak about Tony or Shane. I'm not necessarily that thrilled about Shane Lowry. I know he gained a 1,000,000-stroke short game last week, which I said earlier on another show that was not Shane Lowry playing golf. That was his identical doppelganger that has been putting his whole life. I don't see Shane Lowry putting that well again this week. So if you were to pick, how about we throw some chicken, beef, or lobster out here for Max Homa, Tony Finau, or Shane Lowry?
Well, I was just going to agree with you about Shane Lowry in that if Lowry had a great week ball striking, I'd be way more interested in him this week because that's like, oh, he's back to Lowry. He's back to form. Like, he's going to have another week. But, like, to expect Lowry to go nuclear on the greens again is not realistic. So,
look at this price jump from the Scottish to just one good putting week, and everyone's like, his price has doubled. So, yeah, you can feel free to go buy as much Shane Lowry as y'all want. I'm not dealing with that.
The only positive for me for Lowry this week is that he probably is more comfortable with links golf than some of these other guys. So it's more of a comfort zone for him. But I just don't love the state of his game, especially going into this open major. So
and if it gets low to like -9, if it gets to -19, Shane's not going to be in the picture.
No, it's not going to be his tournament. That's not Shane's game. So, you know, I really don't love this tier. I probably won't play much of any of these guys, but I guess if you're making me pick one, I'll probably take Lowry.
Oh, you would probably take Lowry.
Just Homa, Finau, and Lowry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Max has been also trending in the right direction a little bit lately. We'll see if he can finally maybe get off the planet, you know, off American soil and succeed in a major, because the last Open he played in was with Tiger, and he missed the cut in epic fashion because he was playing with his hero. Like, Max is the most human PGA Tour professional that I know. You know, like, no one else like really wears their heart on their sleeve about how fanboy-y, how normal they are. You know, he's like the most normal professional out there, like celebrity wise. So, and it's funny because he's like the most popular player too. You know, like everyone loves Max. So maybe that's why. Anyway, moving on swiftly. We got Hideki Matsuyama in the next little range here. Matty Fitzpatrick, Colin Morikawa, Adam Scott, Tom Kim. Let's talk about those four. I have my eyes set on two guys here that I really, really like their like path going forward. And it's one guy that's outside the FedEx Cup at 83rd in the field here, old Adam Scott, who I think has the longest run of making the Tour Championships or the playoffs. Sorry, not the Tour Championship, but the playoffs. Or the Tour Championship. I'm not sure. But either way, he's definitely made, I think, the 17 last playoff events, potentially Tour Championships. So talk to me about Adam, who's sitting in 83rd and playing decent golf after missing the cut last week, though.
You know, he is playing decent golf. He does tend to play well in these major events. But in this range, he's my last choice, if not my second to last choice.
Ooh, okay.
My favorite choice in this range, I would say, is Fitzpatrick. Now, I know I'm a risk taker, and I'm okay with that. if all these guys were playing their best, it's easily Fitzpatrick. Problem is, Fitzpatrick has had injury issues. He's been inconsistent, but he's shown weeks that he has popped and he's put it together and he's played really well. He just hasn't been as consistent week to week this season as he was last. It feels like this is a good week for him to have a bounce back. I just think this feels like a good spot for him. He was in that elite range. Now he's really fallen down here to, he's 20th on your list. So at $27, I think you can get a top 10 from Fitzpatrick this week. Yeah.
And I think he was quoted today that he's like, a good result for me this week could be a top 30. I was like, oh boy, okay. This is how he's feeling about his game? I mean, but we had that same situation with Colin, right? Where he's like, I can't hit my irons off this turf. And then a week later, he wins the Open. So these guys are weirdos. They're psychos. They don't, they just think so goofy. But he's right up there, sitting 34th in the FedEx. So we'll see what happens. I don't mind myself, Colin. I think if you're looking to buy a card for this week, if the scores get low, if the wind stays down in a major, Colin Morikawa can gain strokes putting. He does. Go look at his strokes gain on Data Golf. You will see. You don't even have to highlight majors. Just go look for when he's gained strokes putting, and 70 to 85% of those green bars will be for a major. It's just how he does it. I don't know why. Don't know what the deal is. He just gains strokes putting in majors and around the green. So I don't mind him at all this week. I think his price has gone down since the Scottish. I'm in.
And this is the type of week that Morikawa will pop, right? Where it's like those weeks where he had a good week and they price him up and he's up with the leaders. He never does well those weeks. But when people are starting to forget about him, his pricing is down and he's kind of falling to the middle of the pack, is all of a sudden the week where he comes through and pops and has one of those major weeks. So I think from a profile standpoint, I can see that. And I like the fact that now, you're getting him at $27. He's almost kind of fitting into the middle tier, which Colin Morikawa's upside of the middle tier is obviously
not. Yeah. It's up there. So we'll see what he can get up to. I don't mind him at all. And he's still got 17th FedEx Cup ranking. So he's almost guaranteed an appearance at the Tour Championship. So Colin Morikawa to me is one of the most appealing guys at sub $30. Yeah, outside of even Tony Finau. I feel like Tony Finau's trajectory is just going in the complete wrong direction right now. I think you can see it's one of the worst trajectory plus strokes gain total. That's the last 24 and the last 12, taking that like sample difference and adding it to their recent strokes gained. That's what that number's getting you. And Tony's
like on for a minute on this show earlier this year. I think were the one who said it. You were the one who said it. You said, listen, buy Tony Finau now. He's got a stretch of tournaments where he's going to be watered down JV fields. He's going to dominate. Sell him after that stretch, because when he goes back to the big dog tournaments, he's not going to compete. But it's going to be the stretch where he's the top guy. He's going to do well, and then get rid of him. And that's exactly how it played out. He played well in those tournaments, and then he kind of disappeared since then.
Yeah, Mexico Open, I think, was that fulcrum. It was just right then and there. I think I sold Tony Finau for $160. And now he's $29.99. I had to delist one of his cards today because it was $130 I tried to sell it for. And I'm just like, oh boy, we've missed that boat, Byron. You need to get it together, bro, because that is not going to ever happen again. So yeah, it was good to get off most of him then, and life is good. So good stuff there. If I were to pick one other guy in this range, it would be Adam. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's got the 3M, the Wyndham, and this week to get inside that top 70. So we'll see what he can get up to. I think he is playing. If you take a look at his recent stuff, it's solid, right? So he's playing nicely. I think you can get some serious leverage on him at $26, even though his price has jumped a bit since the Scottish. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Joel, I'm not going to rattle off all these guys' names. You take a peek here and tell me, who are you kind of interested in? Yeah, we're starting to get into Ian's question where we're getting into the low price guys. Potentially not even the 10 to 15ers. We probably sub 10 at some of these points. So talk to me about any guy you want here, or even propose a chicken or beef.
I'm going to give you a chicken or beef here because there's one that's popping out to me that I really want to run by you. It's going to be chicken or beef between Cameron Young and Sungjae Im.
Cool. I've got an instant answer, and I know exactly why. 2 reasons why. Cameron Young, so he's changed his golf ball back. That's one of my 3 reasons I'm going to give you. changed his golf ball back, played pretty nicely at the John Deere Classic, which we haven't seen in a while. He's also Rory Wyndham Clark length off the tee. That's reason number 2. At this kind of a golf course, carry those bunkers. He's going to be. How many people is 5 to 10 players maybe that have that kind of length to carry the majority of these bunkers, right? So we'll see. He can probably be one of those. He is one of those 5. And then Sungjae, the third reason is majors. You go take a look at his strokes gained majors. He gets out of military service if he wins a major. It's just too much for him. He for some reason outside of Augusta cannot perform at majors. So for that reason, I'm out.
That's fair. I'm just, I really wanted to give you the chicken. The topic was Cam Young because I'm so torn with him because at one point, it was end of last year, he was playing unbelievable. He looked like he was the next big name. He really struggled midseason this year. Mm-hmm. And I think more recently he's been turning a corner, but he hasn't fully made the turn. So it's like it's a major championship. It's a huge tournament. His price has come down. Is this one where you think he can fully get there and get back to the top 10 Cam Young player we saw? Or do you still think he needs some time?
Well, we haven't seen from Cam Young those first 2 rounds that we saw at the John Deere. Yes, it was the John Deere, but he blitzed that field. He was 13 under after 2 rounds. So we haven't seen that kind of explosivity, peak performance from Cam Young in a long time, right? Like it's been a hot minute since we've seen that from him. So I think those 2 rounds were way more significant than just sucking it up on the weekend a little bit, right? He couldn't quite get it going on the weekend, but he showed us what's in the tank now, at least, right? Like if those rounds weren't there, I wouldn't nearly be as bullish on him. There's an opportunity that those rounds show up again in a major where he's tend to perform back in the past, right? So we get to some British soil. He does like himself some links golf. I mean, he almost won the freaking Open last year. So I don't mind him at all. Compared to Sungjae in particular, I think it's a no-brainer for me, along with these other dodos over here like JT and Jason Day. Like just what are we getting from them? What are we absolutely getting from them? So I've got no faith in them. And Sahith at this golf course, Sahith off the tee I'm going to have to buy blood pressure medication if I roster Sahith in any major capacity this week, because watching him hit driver on a course last week that was way more forgiving than this week was bad enough. And he missed his first cut in a while. So we'll see what he can get up to.
My only thing is, I guess if you really wanted to play Sahith, my only point of devil's advocate would be it might be an opportunity for him to put the driver away, because he needs to be so accurate that maybe he just doesn't drive. And then if he puts the driver away, then maybe he can find some fairways and be okay. No,
Joel, you could go back through like 3 different podcasts where I've said this. Okay, the next week it's like it didn't happen. Like it did not happen. It was the RBC Canadian. It was last week. It's just gone off the boil. It's just off the boil. It's 6 straight, or maybe even 7 that he's lost just off the tee. It's gone. His driver's gone. It's left him. It's out the building, and it's not coming back right now. It doesn't look like.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's hard to. He's lost form from earlier in the year. He just hasn't really shown that magic that he was able to find early in the summer. So right now, it's hard to play Sahith. I'm with you on that one.
I think Sahith's driver's dating Scotty's putter right now. They just
they need help.
We need an intervention. No more. The parents need to come together and just rip them apart. It's like Romeo and Juliet situation. We can't do this nonsense. Enough's enough. So, yeah. Okay, let's scoot on down the board here. Enough dating advice on this podcast for the day. Keegan Bradley, I'm bullish on him. He shows he can just show up in any minute, and he's 6th in the FedEx Cup. If that's more than enough for me to bite. If you haven't got Keegan yet, he's sub 20, 17.75. So don't mind him at all. Chicken or beef me, Joel?
All right. I'm going to give you a chicken or beef here. The first guy I wanted in this scenario is Steven Yeager, because we've seen him show some, pop weeks, some great ball striking. He does struggle to put together 4 rounds, which is the big issue. He's going to do that in a major here. I'm going to pair him here for this particular question with Corey Connors, because I do find them to be a similar profile of golfer.
Yeah. That's a really interesting. That's a tough one for me because the obvious answer should be Corey Connors. Just looking at everything, right? But Jaeger's sitting in 60th. Do you think? Do you think he plays a bit more in the fall? Because this is from a long-term perspective. Oh boy, from a long-term perspective, I don't mind Jaeger, but this week, I'm going to pretend that it gets to -19. I can see Jaeger doing that. I can't see Corey getting to -19. But also he's 60th in FedEx Cup points. I don't know if he's going to be able to play well enough to get all the way through to, the final tour stop, whereas Corey's sitting at 29th. He can potentially make it all the way to Eastlake. So from a long-term perspective, my answer is going to be Corey. If you're looking to buy and sell this week, buy a card this week, use it for contests, sell it next week, Steven Jaeger would be my guy. I don't know. What about you?
I think it's a tough one. I think for me, Jaeger's the type of golfer I'll probably play a lot in showdowns in DK this week and regular. But for week long, I think I would take Connors because I just think, especially in a course like this, I think Jaeger's going to find a blow-up day. Whether it's wind, whether he loses off the tee, and I think it's going to hurt him. But I do think he's going to have, maybe he can have a round that's, 5 or 6 under and puts together one of those really big days. So I think it's the consistency from Jaeger that I haven't seen from him yet. I think he'll get there. I just hasn't been there yet.
Steven Jaeger's not in the field. I just looked it up now. He's not in the field. I don't have my power rankings loaded. Yeah, usually that's what happens that we can use to filter out who's in the field. Jaeger's out. Tom Cruise with the Aviators. Goose, wingman, not helping you. We got a problem. I just typed in JAE and it's only Sung Jae that shows up in the field list. Steven Jaeger ain't playing. That's not good. So he's not in the field. So I'll definitely take Corey Connors. Just confirm for me, please, Joel, that is the case. But yeah, we are touting a guy that's not playing the golf tournament this week. He's got as good a chance of winning this week as I do. And we know how bad my game can be at times. So yeah. But from a long-term perspective, I don't mind Jaeger, even more so now that he's not playing this week. I'll give you a chicken or beef. How do you feel about Harmon? Or let's go with.
I was just going to ask you Harmon or Burns, so give me.
Okay. I'll give you Harmon and Russell Henley, and then I'll answer Harmon and Burns.
Okay, I like that. Okay, so Harmon and Henley is an easy one for me. Okay, no, I take it back. It's not easy, but I'm definitely going to take Harmon because Harmon's made that turn, and now he's in his point where he's playing really well. I think this is the type of course that should suit him really well. In at the price point too, at $15, like I prefer Harmon to Finau or to or Homa or some of those guys we mentioned before per dollar for sure. So I like Harmon a lot this week.
Absolutely, and your Win Daily compadre and the co-host of First Podcast and everything amazing, Sia Najad Sports, out here in the chat telling us that he's on board with Harmon, and to me, I think that is the way to go. I would take Brian Harmon over Sam Burns even. I think we saw Harmon kind of show up at the US Open, and he plays links golf pretty fine. Now, I mentioned earlier, I want distance dudes. If you don't have distance, you need hyper accuracy around you, right? And he might not even have the length to reach these pot bunkers. And we've seen him play really, really good golf. Even last week, he played quite nicely. So I had him in a matchup over Dietrich, which was not looking very good after day one, but then Dietrich did Dietrich stuff and off he went the deep end, finished outside the top 40 even. So I'm all in on Harmon. This price, very nice looking, and 18th in FedEx Cup points. That's solid. That is almost certainly going to get him a good shot at making Eastlake. So I love him there. Henley sitting at 33rd in fantasy. He just wasn't playing in enough tournaments. He went through that stretch where he was just playing in like 2 events in every 6 and just not gaining enough points. So some very interesting situation there. What is Francesco Molinari doing all of a sudden at $13.40 after not ever taking a peek at any double digits? We're just going to think we got the Open and all of a sudden he's going to play well again.
That's baffling to me.
What is this stuff? This is a bit of a... Is there some sort of polyjuice potion that he's taken and all of a sudden he's going to play like Rory next week, or what's the deal?
I might have missed this. I don't know. I'm going to take a stab at this. Are there some like special tournaments this week where you need someone who had an X finish in last year's tournament and he was one of them? So
Ooh, okay. Maybe
that's what I have to assume.
I think you might be right about that because I think there is like a BMW championship tournament that you need the past winner for or something. Okay. That's what happens with this stuff. Sometimes, okay, there we go. Yep. International major winners for the promo, says Sweet Spot DFS. Thank you, my bud. Thanks, Darbo. Also, another fantastic podcast that you're going to have to go and watch. I know Darbo does awesome stuff trying to optimize and hit that optimal lineup every week and does a great job doing all of that stuff. So check his stuff out there for sure. Francesco Molinari out here blowing our minds because we're not informed enough and we're hosting a Rainmakers podcast. So don't worry, boys. We got this covered. Got the chat coming in clutch here as co-pilot. So thank you for that, Goose. All right, Joel. I'm going to scroll more.
You kind of skipped over someone I really like. I just want to mention, I think the price has come down way too far on Sam Burns. This is still, I think Sam Burns is still a very elite talent. To now come all the way down to this range with your Strakas and Jaegers and Siwoos, I think he's just a better golfer than these guys. And the results have been there. He's not struggling. He's been playing pretty well. So I think Sam Burns is a really good value this week.
Okay. My concern with him is major performance. Again, similar situation to Sungjae. Just hasn't really shown us he's got it in the majors, kind of like Max Homa. But from a long-term perspective, 16th in FedEx Cup ranking, and we know when we got one more major and that's done. After that, we can get old Sam Burns back. And I can see him playing nicely around East Lake. So definitely don't mind Sam Burns if you're kind of looking for a little bit of a long-term perspective. And maybe you get lucky and play him this week, and I'm wrong and he plays well. That would be awesome. So I like it too. What about Sepp? Let's just talk about Sepp because my first outright of the year didn't involve two players, Nick Hardy and Davis Riley, but hit my Sepp at the John Deere here in my hometown of Iowa, home state, and it was awesome. So now he's playing good golf. What are your thoughts?
I love to see Sepp playing good. Sepp to me is one of those guys that's very boom or bust, right?
Yes.
He's had one of those hot weeks. He's going to give you a really good finish, especially at his price tag. But the counter to Sepp is he can easily miss the cut any week. So there's definitely a bit of risk you're taking by playing Sepp. But because of the upside, I do think he's worth taking the shot on because when he does put one of those weeks together, he's lights out and he'll get you even top 10 upside in a field like this.
Yeah. And we're speaking Rainmakers. We are speaking long-term. There is also not in my little list of tournaments ahead is the Ryder Cup, which they switched the Barracuda out for the Ryder Cup. And Sepp is on the precipice of Ryder Cup picks, so he has one or two more good weeks. Next thing he's playing in the Ryder Cup. And that's going to be a week where we can see prices doing some serious things, Joel, because we've got 24 guys, right, that are going to be playing. And 12 of them are going to be Euros. One of them is going to be Jordan Spieth, who's not even part of the squad. Aberg might be in there, who knows? But the majority of those Euros don't even have Rainmaker cards. So we're going to have a severe supply of cards and a severe demand with a minimum supply in a 24-man field that probably, maybe 16 of them will have Rainmaker cards.
And that's the week where
the
card number is going to be important because there's going to be duplicates. There's just not enough guys to play when you can't. So you're going to want that, that's where like getting the 300th tier edition card can really hurt you. And you really want something on the top, 10, and it's worth paying the premium to get it.
Yep. I totally agree. So maybe would you say maybe there's some guys that are a little misguided and will be looking to just be getting some action there. Would that be the week you try and sell your high edition count cards, kind of potentially get your monies back as much as you can in a week of like volatility where you can really maybe take advantage of that? Because even if you roster them, that edition is going to hurt you.
It depends. I mean, if the price doesn't drop, it stays consistent, then take advantage of it. If the price does drop and people are seeing the same thing, they just wait another week when it doesn't become such a handicap and just sell them the next week when that addition tier won't mean as much.
Yeah, it's going to be curious, and we collecting this data. This is my Rainmaker model. I keep every week I update the stuff, so we're going to see Ryder Cup weeks, I know it's not going to happen this year, but we'll have the President's Cup the following year, right? So we'll see these kind of situations unfold, and we can potentially project how things will go after 1 or 2 years of history kind of being recorded here. So
I have one more chicken or beef for you before we wrap this up.
Yes, look me up. I'm hungry.
You about Eric Cole and Benny Ann.
Wow. Okay. Sitting right next to each other here at 11.99. Eric Cole has been, Joel, I had a plus 490 top 20 on Eric Cole sitting in T5 going into Sunday.
Oh, sickening.
T5 plus 490, one more round to go, 9 over par on Sunday. He's been doing this. He was sitting 4th at the Travelers, makes an 8. Like, it's just, and this is going to be his like 15th straight event. He's just not stopping playing golf. So Benny on. I don't know. How can I answer this? Because I feel like Benny On's a bit more refreshed. He's also gone to the broomy. He's now a wizard, and he's waving that broomstick, and it is working for him. So we haven't really seen as much of a price increase in that. So I totally agree. He was playing great. He shot 900 in the first round last week. So totally in on Benny On. He seems like he can also hang around now that the putter's not letting him down as much, and he's potentially got the distance to carry a few of those bunkers I was talking about. So yes, load me up with all the warmed up microwave Benny On, and I love Eric Cole, but after last week, like you said, he burnt me so hard. I pretty much thought I had it in the bag. 5-1 top 20 on Eric Cole, finishes like 63rd, dude. So Benny On, who would you pick?
It's a tough one for me. I think I agree with all your sentiment there. Eric Cole is having a hard time finishing right now, but he's still playing good golf generally, other than kind of choking at the end. And Benny Ann's kind of the opposite, where Benny Ann can have a hot day, but I don't think he's as consistent overall as Eric Cole has been this season, right? So I think Benny Ann, can get hot. There'll be a day or two he'll play really well. I think they're similar profile. If I had to pick one of the two, I probably would go with Cole, but I think it's very close.
But since he's got the broomstick, we've seen a Lucas Glover resurgence with Ben On. Like, the putter has been completely different since he's got the broom.
That's true, and that is his biggest handicap.
This is his biggest problem. Yeah.
If he solves that, then you're right. I think then at that point I would consider him to have turned the corner. So I think that's a fair point. I think you've convinced me. I'll probably change my pick to Ben An.
Cool. Yeah, we can line together. You can share some of mine. And funnily enough, he has Lucas Glover right next to him, the two broomstick bros. So really interesting stuff. Seamus Power's price has plummeted since he's had a hip injury now as well. So that's never good. And he said it flared up. Like, that's speaking like it's been a thing at some point already. So but we'll see. I don't know how that's gonna go. Some guys, let's do this and filter by FedEx Cup ranking now, because we kind of like deep into the weeds. So Richard Johnson, I don't want in the mix here. We'll just get rid of him. But we're just going to scoot down. So we've spoken about Nick Taylor, who's sub 844. That, to me, we've said bye. We love that. What about Kurt Kitayama?
Kurt, depends what you want to do. If you're going to win, if you're trying to win like the top prize in one of these big tournaments, winner take all, Kurt Kitayama is not going to be the guy that's going to do that in Rainmakers. If you're playing a more conservative, where it's like, top X amount, win $100 or $50, that's the type of tournament where he makes a lot of sense, because he's pretty safe. He plays well. I just think his upside is a little bit limited. So if you're going to win a big tournament, you probably won't with Kitayama, but I do think that you can win money with him.
Yeah, and as you can see, that trajectory and strokes gain total it's all over. It's one of the worst in this range. Yeah, so not looking good for Kurt. He hasn't been playing that hot lately, but he is very affordable, and he's 20th in FedEx Cup ranking. So you're gonna have him for a little bit of the playoffs. Taylor Moore, to me, is someone that I'm kind of intrigued in. He's won once already. Kind of showed some life at the Rocket Mortgage. Did his thing there. 25th in FedEx Cup points, and he's 884 as well. So to me, at any moment he could pop. He's also got lots of length off the tee for this week. The price of the Scottish versus now has kind of dipped back to 884 after he played pretty badly, I assume. So I have a few of him already, so I'm not going to be selling him. So that's my stance on him. I'm looking forward to him trying to do well in the playoffs.
Yeah, I like Taylor Moore as a golfer. If you're looking for guys under $10, I think he's one of the best options to go with. If you have a higher budget, I think you can do better. But for guys under $10, I think he's a good choice.
Yeah. We're kind of getting back to Ian's question, where he asked us, for some value plays we can get under $10 or so with some good long run opportunities to kind of roster them in playoffs. So from a Sungjae perspective, I wouldn't mind playing him long term, but just this week, not so much. Adam Svensson been playing really bad. He's 499 and 36th in FedEx Cup points after his RSM win ages ago, like last year. I don't know about that. Mackenzie Hughes, he's interesting. He can pop. How about Brendan Todd? We've been seeing him like kind of float up and down the leaderboards. Or just tell me anyone that you're kind of interested in this range here that's kind of sub 10, that's in the mid 30s, 40s, and FedEx Cup points.
I don't really love this range. I guess the two guys that pop out most to me, three. I'll give you three guys that pop out most to me right now are Adam Hadwin, who you can also get under $8, which we've seen him show upside this season. Davis Riley, who looked pretty good over the last week. He had a few rounds where he came through. He's making some putts. So we know Davis Riley, when he's playing well, has a lot of upside. So if he found something, it could be him. And Alex Smalley, who has been, gaining his ball striking has been really good. So if you're looking for discount guys under $10 in this range, those are the guys that I have my eyes on.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're spot on there. And these two guys, Alex and Tom Hoagie, are ball striking like iron players, right? Like Smalley's hitting his irons like Tom Hoagie used to hit his irons. And then we saw Tom Hoagie play pretty nicely last week. So potentially, if you're looking, those are two guys right in the mixture that I would not mind at all. Hoagie, if he gets hot, we can see him get some stuff done. And especially after last week's little thing, maybe he suckered us right back in and off we go and has a blow up this week. But at this kind of price, you can throw him in some crappy lineups and you never know what happens. He could make a run in the playoffs and kind of sneak into the Tour Championship there. Sub $10, right? That's like your ideal situation, is to buy a guy sub 10 in this range that can give you 4 more tournaments from now on. Potentially 5 if they play in the Wyndham, right? Or the 3M where they're trying to just get some more points.
Exactly.
So we'll see what happens there. A few other guys. Hayden Buckley's just hasn't shown anything significant lately. Matt Kuchar, same situation. I'm not trusting any of them. Jaeger, we spoke about him. Vincent Norman, I don't know. So we kind of just, I think we got to most of the guys that we really like. Austin Eckroyd was like a hot commodity for a while. Like going into the US Open, he was $28. And now he's $668. He's dropped significantly in that range. Talk about a market overreaction over here too. Just insane. But the signs were there, So if you got in on Austin Eckroyd at 28, oh boy. Basically like having Max Homa.
That's a wild drop. I mean, I'd be okay with going back to him at $6. That's so cheap. Like, I still think he has a good result in him. So at $6, I think he's come back to playable.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're looking for someone in this range, for sure, I'm in on him too. I think he's the guy we want to go with, and Jaeger, obviously, but he's way more expensive. So cool. I like it. It was awesome. Joel, thank you so much. Nice to be back in the cockpit with you. Mrs. Maniac has potentially lost these aviators because they are now mine. They are, I don't know what brand they are. I don't know how feminine they make me look, but I feel sexy. I feel like Tom Cruise, and things are looking good here for Rainmaker Runway, episode 11, brought to you by rotoballer.com. Surprise, surprise. It took us 64 minutes to say that, but the little thing underneath there has been telling you the whole time. So use code Maniac for 10% off. The Rotoballer crew, we had 3 of us hit Sepp Straka at the John Deere Classic. That was kind of wild. Yeah. I don't know how that happened, but ideally as like a service provider, or you want one of your guys to like hit every single week, but we went 3 deep and that's how we roll. So if you get in on the Rotoballer party, we got you covered. So Use code Maniac for 10% off there, friends. Go check out the Win Daily Draftcast tomorrow, 9 Eastern. Is it tomorrow, 9 Eastern?
Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock.
Perfect. Yep, that's awesome. I'll be in the chat there watching you guys do your thing. It's one of my favorite podcasts out there that has got probably the best live audience interaction, in this space. So an awesome pod that you guys should definitely check out. And I'll be doing my solo show tomorrow night, and then I'll be doing a Wednesday podcast with my friend Curtain Call, where we just do the last minute ownership pivots, check the weather out, kind of like a cram sesh, hangout bro session. We'll be wearing cutoffs and flexing muscles, drinking seltzers. A little bit of a bro moment there. So he's my buddy. I've enjoyed hanging out with him too. So till then, folks, thank you so much. Hit the like button on the way out, and we'll catch y'all tomorrow. Thank you very much.